You're looking at me.
No, it's just like, I don't know if there's some kind of interference or something. What the hell is that?
The steel plate in my head?
You don't actually need two microphones.
Oh, am I doing that? Sorry.
That may.
I assumed this one was
Let
off.
me check out.
Okay, yeah, I just grabbed this one because I didn't want to clip it to myself. No?
I might figure it out on the fly. I wasn't doing this a second ago. This is the trouble having all these microphones.
I mean, can I turn this off? Wouldn't that make it better?
Oh, yeah.
Don't touch it. Hello, and welcome to the Milton Warrant Committee meeting of January 20th, 2026. Karen, can you call roll?
We have Jay Fundling, Nicole Boyson, James Lee Dassey, Julia Maxwell is on Zoom, Brian McGuire is here. On Zoom we have Lee Michael McLean, Ron Sia, Nicholas Tangney is here, and Cecile Yang is on Zoom. You have a quorum.
Okay, and I will mention that you said Ron Sia is in Zoom. Ron is recusing himself for the budget discussion, which will be our first discussion. So Ron is not a participant in the first discussion in Zoom. So with that out of the way, agenda items. Our first agenda item, as always, is to approve minutes. I don't believe we have any lined up to approve tonight.
We do not.
Okay. So, and we'll acknowledge Larry Johnson joined us.
Sorry, mate.
Not a problem, not a problem. First, the next item is to discuss the current status of the FY27 budget. I would like to share my screen. We can't talk and do things at the same time, so give me just a second. Okay. Get out of the way. All right. So I do want to say that the Milton Town budget is in the planning process. At this point, during the month of January, it's at the point where the town administrator puts together a budget proposal that he will propose to us that we will review. So that's where we are, and that's where we would expect to be. Things are a bit delayed because, and you may have seen an email, you may have seen discussion about this, due to both revenues and expenses coming in where they're coming in, there was a shortfall that the town administrator is seeing, and so now the town administrator and the select board and the school committee, as well as the town budget committee that Brian and I are your representatives on, as well as the warrant committee, are all going to discuss sort of what are our options for making up the shortfall to the extent that we can in the budget that the town administrator puts together. So that's what I want to discuss, is where things stand now. Everything I'm presenting, almost everything I'm presenting comes from something that the town administrator has said publicly. I'll try to be clear if I'm saying something otherwise. And obviously, you know, as I say on this first slide, all errors are mine. I feel a little bit sheepish about representing what someone else has said, but I've tried to pull it together in a way that lets us see where are we, how did we get here, where are we going, what are our options, what are our options for making, if we have any recommendations to make to the town administrator regarding how the budget's going to come together. So let me jump into it. How did we get here? Let's go back in time. Well, first of all, people are asking, how did we get here? Because last year, less than a year ago, we had an override, which was one of the largest in the history of the state of Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Sorry. And now we have a budget shortfall. So it's a natural question, how did we get here? By the way, if you're looking at my screen, I apologize. The bottom right is small and fuzzy. Patience, please. So how did we get here? Well, we had an override. And I was looking back at how that override was presented to the select board at their one of their meetings in March of last year. And I saw that the town administrator said, here's some options for the override, for the size of the override, for what we do with it. And then here's a projection of what we'll see over the next 5 years if you do this override and if these assumptions are met. One thing that leapt out at me, so even though it's fuzzy, I apologize. If you really want to see this, I encourage you to look at the March 11th, 2025 Select Board meeting. But I'll just say we went with what is labeled here as Scenario B, which is a $9.5 million override with $700,000 of that going into, sorry, I left something key off that billet. $700,000 of that going into an override stabilization budget. So we're setting up an operating budget stabilization fund. I apologize. I don't have my script today. So $9.5 million override. Of that $9.5 million, every year $700,000 goes into an operating budget stabilization fund, plus an additional $2 million into the operation budget stabilization fund. The goal for that being we can continue to fund the operating budget for a couple more years, even with costs growing faster than revenues. That's what the Operation Budget Stabilization Fund is supposed to be for. And with that forecast, Mr. Milano saw no operating budget deficit into FY30. Even though the numbers are blurry, you can sort of see that Scenario B, it's not till FY30 that we start to have a deficit. Now, I was looking at this meeting and some of the backup to it this weekend, and there were a couple issues, and I don't want, I checked with Mr. Milano. I'm not trying to throw him under the bus. I want to be clear. I'm not trying to point blame at anyone. I'm just trying to figure out how we got here, because a lot of residents have asked, how did we get here? So we had a forecast that said we're going to be fine until 2030. What happened? Well, if you look at the left, that's a slide from the meeting, which says, here are the assumptions I'm making for this 5-year forecast. If you look, whoops, I was going to highlight it. Third from the bottom, it said, we're assuming salaries go up at 4% a year. So on the right-hand side, you can see the slide shown in the meeting said, I assume salaries are going to go up 4% a year. But then in the meeting, a select board member asked Mr. Milano, so schools can only increase 3%, fire and everything, 3% increase, that's it. And Mr. Milano said, right. So already that's a disconnect, because school, we know schools, 80% of their budget is salaries. So if the salaries go up at 4%, the budget's pretty much going up at 4%. But a select board member asked, things are going to be limited to 3%? And Mr. Milano said, right. And then I've looked at the Excel spreadsheet that generated the forecast, and I've confirmed with Mr. Milano this is the correct sheet, and that assumed a 2.5% salary increase. So the numbers that generated the forecast that said we'll be good for 5 years assumed a 2.5% salary increase, period. So, and that's what generated the assumption. That's what generated the forecast put together last spring. And now we're in a situation where the schools are saying, we had the schools, as you might have seen, again, I'm sheepish about speaking for someone who's not here, but I have to. The schools asked for a 5.2% budget increase this year. And they said 4.5% of that is due to salaries. And they've gotten pushback. Mr. Milano says, well, we don't have that much, and we're not going to have that much going forward. And the schools have said, that's what we need year after year. We need salary increases like this. They're contractually obligated. I'm not sure what my next slide is. Let me see. Oh, okay. I can handle this slide. What I said, there was a 5-year forecast. Here's what went in, going into that 5-year forecast, I have the most important assumptions listed at the top. We assumed healthcare was going to go up 7% a year, and we assumed salaries are going to go up 2.5% a year. If we have that, you can see I don't have them labeled. Shame on me for making a bad graph, but you can probably figure it out. The blue line is revenue, the orange line is expenses. Expenses go up faster than revenue. And then for the next slide, how do we deal with that? Expenses going up, revenue? Well, that's a budget stabilization fund. This is a bit of a busy graph, but every year you see what we're contributing into it is in green, what we're taking out of it is in red, and then the balance at the end of the year is in orange. So you can see we put a lot into the first year. After that, I'm assuming just $700,000 growing with 2.5%. So it's a pretty constant green line of money going in every year. Money coming out gets bigger and bigger every year because our expenses are growing faster than our revenue. And the orange line, again, this is the initial assumptions made as of last year. The orange line, well, it gets bigger at first and goes down and down and down. And then we would get to like FY31 and say to ourselves, we need an override. We'd also say we had this great forecast that we knew was coming. So we've known an override was coming for the past couple of years. The town is prepared for it. We're all good. That's how it should work. Okay. And since we had to take, in FY31, if we had to take $2 million out of it to fund that, to fund the budget, presumably the override would be a little larger than $2 million, but somewhere on that order of magnitude. But what happened? We're not 5 years out, we're only 1 year out, and we're already seeing a budget shortfall, much more significant than expected. What happened with these assumptions? Well, the two big ones are health insurance inflation. Mr. Milano, I believe, has talked to this, body. I may be confusing my meetings. Health insurance, all towns are seeing significant health insurance inflation. We had very modest health insurance inflation for at least 5 years. Last year we had pretty significant health insurance inflation. We're going to see it again this coming year. So we're setting the premiums in February to say what is the health insurance going to cost during FY27. And we're currently looking at, he's thinking a 10% increase from last year to this year. So he was assuming a 7% increase. Now we're looking at a 10% increase. That's about $500,000. Also put in there the sensitivity of what if inflation was 14%? That would add another little more than $500,000. Why am I looking at that? I'm looking at that because, take this for the secondhand information that it is, I believe the insurance companies we work with we pay the claims. The employee goes to the doctor, the claim eventually goes to us and comes out of our pocket. But there are insurance companies who run everything. They administer the claims. They say what's allowed, what's not allowed, all that good stuff. I believe the insurance companies we work with are moving to be more restrictive, specifically moving to restrict GLP-1 drugs. And that's the difference between a 14% increase and a 10% increase. There might be a question of, are we actually going to cover those drugs? Are we not? So there might be a possibility of a 14% healthcare increase. But right now we're looking at a 10% increase. Sorry if I'm being a little vague, but that's what we're looking at. The school cost. So the school cost, as I said, the forecast was for school salaries to go up 2.5%. That's the bulk of the school budget. So we're expecting the school budget to go up a little bit more than 2.5%. The schools are asking for 5.5% more. That's $1.9 million more than what we thought they were going to be asking for. Every 1% change in school cost is $750,000. Now, one question is, the schools have said, whether or not we can we need 5.2% or whether or not we can live with a smaller amount this year, that's one thing. But the schools are very concerned that the forecast that Mr. Milano has their costs going up by less than 3% every year. They've said, 1 year maybe we could handle, but year over year over year, we need more than 3%. We need probably more than 4%. We need that to keep a school running. And so they're concerned not only about this year, but about what are things like going forward if this is what we're seeing this year. So I want to, yes, okay, this next slide. There's a lot going on here. But I ask myself, is it reasonable for us to assume a school budget goes up 3% year after year after year, 3% or less? Or is it like the schools say that to keep a school district running, you need prices to go up you need the budget go up by over 4%. So I want to tell you what the slide is and what it is not. It is not an attempt to get into the discussion of, is Milton a frugal school town or a profligate school town? Do we pay too much for our schools or do we pay too little for our schools? That's maybe a discussion for another day. This is a question of year after year after year, not in one individual year, what does a school district need to keep functioning? And so I looked at a slew of comparable towns. I have a little disclaimer of where I got this list of comparable towns, but hopefully if you look at this list, you'll agree they're towns that are in the greater Boston area that we might want to compare ourselves to. And I didn't just look at individual years, because any individual year you could have a very big increase in your school budget one year, and then you make up for it by having a smaller increase in the next year. So I looked over 5 years. I looked at per pupil spending from 2018 to 2023 over 5 years. What do we have? For this group of peer communities, the average increase, 5.4%. The 25th percentile is 4.7%. The smallest one is 3.9%. Now that I look at it, it's Sharon. I'm speaking off the cuff, but I believe one reason Sharon's increase is so low is because they're spending a lot. When you start high enough, you don't have to grow very high. Sorry, I'll stop with the editorializing. But this gives me some confidence that when the school committee says, forget about 1 year, we need 4% or more year after year after year to keep the level of service people want, this makes me inclined to believe them. I'll stop
Can I ask
here.
this question? So
Yes.
you're saying that Hingham,
Yes.
from 2018 to 2023, had an 8.1% increase
Per year.
average
Um,
in teacher salaries.
in per pupil spending,
That's per pupil spending.
mm-hmm.
But
I am going off my memory. I know
that's not salaries.
it's not salaries, it's per pupil spending. So it's a little bit apples and oranges. But
The salaries are in there, obviously.
yeah, salaries are the biggest part of any school's
And
budget.
you said 80%.
And per pupil, I don't know if the
But it could be
district is
head
growing.
count, could be a piece of it.
Yeah, I don't know if the district is growing or shrinking. This is sort of a gut check of, are they way off when they're saying they need to grow over 4% a year? And to me, this says, no, they're not way off. I'll stop. Any questions about any of the slides I presented so far?
So we didn't catch that last year. So he only projected 2.5%.
Yes. I will say that this budget coordination committee that we formed that has a couple members of the select board, a couple members of the school committee, as myself and Brian, that's one of the benefits of this new committee is to help avoid surprises like that. I'm sorry, you didn't ask a question.
No, that was my question. Yeah, I just wanted clarification. Yeah. Any idea how we missed it or whatever? I mean, I guess the budget committee's new. So
Yeah,
they
the budget
might
committee
have
didn't exist last year. I don't know. I keep thinking the buck stops here. Like, should I have noticed it?
No, it's fine, Jay.
I will say one thing.
I didn't notice it.
I will say one thing is that Mr. Milano had to work with the override that the select board gave him.
Yeah.
And the select board said $9.5 million, he had to work with it. Now, you still want to produce a forecast that you think is going to be accurate.
So Does this impact just the schools, or does it impact the whole town?
Good question. I believe, and I'm speaking off the cuff, I believe that town departments asked for about I'll say in the ballpark of a 3% increase, and they're being held to 2.3%, which is the same thing the schools are being held to. So, no, it's not just affecting the schools, but it's affecting the schools more
Okay, all right.
because they had a bigger ask
Now,
for service.
for the warrant articles we've already reviewed, will we have to get a new one and review it from the departments, like the fire department or the DPW?
Oh, the requests? Good question. Yeah, the reason, I think, remember I said we wanted to sort of lay the groundwork and become familiar with the budgets, and then we would come to the spring and see if anything changed. Well, now the answer is going to be yes, something's changed, probably. So, yeah, there was the request, and then there was how Mr. Milano's going to adjust the request. So, yes, it could be.
Yeah, that's fine.
Julia's hand.
Oh, Julia.
Hi, thanks. So why are all of the departments being asked to hold to a 2.3% increase if we'll be able to raise the levy by 2.5% year-over-year?
I might have missed the first word or two. Were you asking, is this applying to every single department the same? Or were you asking?
No, I was
why-
asking why every department is being held to a 2.3% increase.
Good question. The revenue is going up not only by 2.5%, but remember from our training, the revenue also goes up by new growth, which is about $1 million. So the revenue's growing up by about 3%. Why are we falling short? The big ones are because we expected that, first of all. So the forecast expected revenue to go up by about 3%. But versus the forecast, the big changes are health insurance is hitting us by $500,000. The school's level service request is hitting us by $2 million. That's not everything, but those are the big drivers.
So sorry, you're saying they're being asked to hold for a 2.3% increase for FY27 budgeting? Or yeah, 2.3% for FY27 budgeting?
Correct.
Okay. And then could you go back to the slide with the green, orange, and red bar graph? Yes. This is where I always start. The stabilization funds, I always get a little shaky.
That's fine.
And I don't, I'm trying to understand what these different contribution levels are and where they came from
Okay.
and what the withdrawals are for, like where they came from.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say, first of all, this is a new budget stabilization fund. It was created last year, so it's brand new.
Right.
And in my humble opinion, this wasn't discussed very much leading into the override. This is a part of the override. It was something that town meeting approved, warrant committee recommended. There wasn't a whole lot of discussion about it. There was some discussion among the warrant committee, not a lot. Not a lot of discussion in town meeting. So, and this is probably the first time I've made this graph and probably the first time you've seen something like it. So I'll try to talk you through it. So the idea behind the budget stabilization fund is our expenses grow faster than our revenues. The way we've dealt with that to some extent in the past was in the year we had an override, maybe we'd have a little bit more spending. And then the first year after that, well, we'd cut back that extra spending. And the year after that, we say, oh, we're going to lay off some art teachers and we're going to close the library on Sunday. And the year after that, we'd say we're also closing the library on Saturday and we're going to lay off some music teachers. And then we'd have an override. So we'd be cutting expenses because expenses grow faster than revenue. The idea behind the idea behind this fund is we sock some money away. And so that we don't spend that money in the first year after the override, and by the last year after the override, we are spending it. We're spending more and more. So what we said, and when you voted on the override, you voted on I believe it was $8.8 million to go in the operating budget, and $700,000 to go to this budget stabilization fund. In addition to that, last year, we took $2 million of free cash and put it directly into this budget stabilization fund to start it out. So that's where I say, okay, FY26, we contributed 2.7.
Sorry, Jay,
Okay,
but
sorry.
if last year was 2 million, I guess I'm lost on the 2 million.
Okay.
Like, are we just agreed to do it again this year?
No. So at last year's town meeting, we said in the FY26 budget, we should take 2 million of free cash and put it into this fund.
Okay, got it.
Okay. So FY26, we're collecting taxes. That's putting in 700,000. We also seeded it with $2 million to start with. Every year going forward, the taxes will contribute 700,000 plus 15%. Plus 2.5%.
Okay.
And so that's what I have going in. What I have coming out, and this is based on Mr. Milano's forecast. Sorry, Mr. Milano's forecast spreadsheet that he put together last spring. And I don't know if there's any science behind the withdrawals, but it's sort of, well, here's the budget shortfall for these years, and here's what we'll take out every year until I think FY31 we didn't have enough to make up for the budget shortfall. So one of my issues, and one that I think could use some work, is that withdrawal number. What should it be? Should it be, well, here's our shortfall of the year, let's pull it out? I don't think we want it to be that loosey-goosey. Should it be, here's the number carved in stone in the year 2026, and we're going to stick to it in the year FY30? Maybe it shouldn't be that rigid, but the budget committee has discussed this a bit. I think we need some guidance around what that withdrawal number is going to be. So, yeah, and you can see the balance goes down because every year we're putting some in, we're taking more out, the balance is going down. Julia, can you give me feedback on that?
Yeah, no, that's super helpful. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. So,
Jay,
yeah, sure.
I mean, I have clear thoughts. I mean, that's not the point of the stabilization fund.
You,
I mean, it's just smooth out lumpiness, not, if you're looking at projections that essentially draw down to zero over time, all you're using the stabilization fund is to kick the can down the road, as opposed to unusual one-time expenses or unexpected shortfall, services that are absolutely, it should more or less budget this, and the stabilization meant to stabilize cash flow over that period of time.
I guess my response would be, and maybe it's poorly named. There's the general stabilization fund, which is like, do not break glass in case of emergency, and that's if we have a recession, we'll reach into that. There's also things like the capital budget stabilization fund, which we haven't used in recent years, but would be something like you say, if we have capital needs that are really high one year, we might dip into that. If we have extra free cash, we put into that. So maybe this is poorly named when it says stabilization fund. But as I understand it, and as I think Mr. Milano understands it, this is exactly how it's supposed to be used. The stabilization is not just, it can fluctuate, it can stabilize year to year variability, but really the stabilization we're getting is consistent services to provided to the town between overrides. So
I agree. That's my read as well.
Was that presented?
It's Lee
that way?
Michael. I was just
Yep.
saying that's my read as well, because this has been a tale as old as time. We always have this problem because the teachers and the firefighters and the unions always negotiate more than 2.5% increase each year. So we're always having to cut somewhere in order to make the balanced budget. So by putting a little money away, not borrowing, but taking away from that kitty every year would help us from having to cut the services, like Jay is saying.
Andrew, you had a very good question. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, I'm not sure it was portrayed that way at town meeting.
I'm not sure how,
Message that way.
that's not the question I thought you had. I don't think it was discussed very much at town meeting at all.
Okay.
I don't think it was discussed very much town-wide at all. It was discussed some at this room, but it was sort of a surprise. Like, I think most people in this room were surprised when the subject came up and said, what is this? What are we talking about? So I certainly think this was not fully discussed before last year. If that's your statement, I agree with it.
Okay. I would have characterized it as a reserve fund, not a stabilization fund. I mean,
Okay.
stabilization funds are real, essentially created to smooth out cash flow. And this is just, we're gonna draw it down to zero and then reset the marker again.
This is how it's designed to function.
Okay.
I don't know if, again, I'm speaking off the cuff, I could be totally wrong. I don't know if there are state laws that say if you call it stabilization funds behave this way and reserve funds behave that way. I do know other towns have funds like this that they use in this way. The only thing I can tell you about the future is that it won't match this. Even before we knew this year won't match this, we know there's going to be ups and downs. And those ups and downs might lead to us putting more free cash in there. They might lead to the withdrawal being higher or lower, depending on our needs. So there will be some bumpiness, and this might help with the bumpiness. But yeah, I would say this is how it's designed to work. Maybe the name stabilization fund is a poor name. And I totally agree that this was not part of the general town discussion last year to the extent that I could tell. It wasn't hidden.
No, I
It wasn't
guess I misunderstood what the purpose was then.
Okay. Brian?
A couple questions. Can you go back? By the way, did you send this to us?
No,
Oh, can you?
but I should.
Yeah.
But I will.
Going back to the per student expenditures,
Okay.
do you have that for the state, what the state average is?
Oh, probably. I think I
Oh,
have it
it's in
for
your
every town
database.
in the state, but I had to narrow it down.
So it's all based, like, they haven't negotiated the contract yet. So it's all based on what they want to negotiate with the contract. So they think they want to go for 4%, but they don't have to negotiate 4% or 4.1%.
Well, if I look at
That's what they
this,
think they should.
if I look at this and I tell myself we want to compete for teachers who can get jobs at these towns,
Yeah. But if you look at their average, just a point, if you look at their average teacher salary in the state as of 2023, they're actually in the top 32%. So Milton is very competitive, paying its teacher salaries.
okay. Like I said a few minutes ago, there's the question of, are we spending too much or too little on the schools? And I did not intend this slide to answer that question. That is a question.
Yeah,
This slide is when the schools say, to run a school district, we, forget 1 year after the next, over the medium term, we need to go up at least 4%. That's what this slide was to answer that question.
and one of my questions, because I'm on the budget committee too, this is always nags me, and it nagged me last year too, is that we don't look at is headcount. Like, one of the drivers of salaries is headcount.
Oh,
And-
employees.
Yeah, the number of people you have.
I hear you. I still, from a certain point of view, I might say to myself, as a warrant committee, we could close our eyes and say, school committee, we'll give you 3% a year and you do whatever you want with it. And I'd be fine with that. Now, because we're not getting into how they're running the school, we're getting into how much we should fund them. And this slide tells me we should be funding them increasing at least 4% a year, maybe not in every single individual year, but smoothed over time. Our town should be funding our schools at least 4% per year unless we've got a good reason not to. And I don't care if they have high head count, low head count, gold-plated schools, whatever. If they come in at 4 to 4.5% per year, that's their business to run the schools. I'm being a little glib, but it's a hard line to walk between what's our job and what's not. Nikki has a question. Are you okay?
Well,
Oh, I don't want to.
no, I mean, that's the question. Should they go up 4%, 4.1% a year in salaries?
I
And
think
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
it's total cost. I think
No, it's 5.2 in total cost, actually.
for tonight's
They want to go up.
discussion, I want to look at where are we for the entire budget, and this is just one part of it. This is a concern the schools have expressed. So I don't want to get too far off on this path.
It's 5.8% statewide over that same period, according
Okay.
According to what, Desi?
to co-pilot.
Oh, co-pilot.
That's
all right.
numbers.
Nikki?
I was just trying to get a sense for how much detail we have in the school budget. I have right now the projection with requests, and I'm like looking at the big budget, and it has the consolidated school numbers. Like I can look at school department salaries, I can look at school department general, and that's the breakout, but I assume that the budget that we have is much more detailed.
We're going to get more information. Yeah, they were hoping to give us, by us I mean specifically the school subcommittee, something by now. But then when they, to hear them tell it, and not casting aspersions, to hear them tell it when they learned a few weeks ago, wait, you've got to, instead of going up 5.3%, you need to go up 2.3% or whatever it was.
Okay.
They had to revamp everything. So it's in flux.
Okay, because again, just the numbers I have in this one spreadsheet, it's like, it looks like the total school expenses are going up 8.4%. Like, again, I don't know where my numbers tie with yours, but.
Oh,
but I'm
from
just,
like last year to this year?
Yeah.
I mean, with the override, it's
hard to assess the
yeah.
9.5 million. Okay, yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I was
there was
just,
the override, there was,
yeah,
yeah.
okay. Because, that's clearly, this is like not rocket science, we already talked about this. It's schools and group insurance
Okay.
that have gone up a lot. Everything else is kind of nickel and dimey. The percentages are high, but the numbers aren't huge. Like fire department salaries are, like, that's a 12% increase. Like, I'm just.
Okay.
Yeah, my point is, like, I guess at some point we dig into more of the details, but right now we're just trying to get a big picture sense.
Yeah, I want to move on a little bit to keep going with the big picture.
Okay.
Sensitivity to assumptions. So, school salary and health insurance aren't the only assumptions that are being made and that could change. So I want to look at some of these. What are the assumptions? What will happen if they change? And sort of subjective, sort of going off guidance from Mr. Milano, are we likely to get a happy surprise or an unhappy surprise from these things? State aid, Mr. Milano has said he thinks we have a very conservative assumption for state aid, but he's also said it may not be any better than that. We will learn within a week and a half what the governor is going to propose for state aid. Now, then it has to go to the state senate, then it has to go to the state house. None of that will happen until, we're probably done with town meeting. But at least getting the governor's budget should happen in a few weeks, before the end of the month. He's assuming it'll go up 1%. If it goes up 2%, that's another 180,000. Goes up another %, that's another 180,000. It might go up, it might stay where it is. It's unlikely to get worse. Blue Hills Technical, the percent increase looked pretty steep to me. I thought that might be a little too conservative, but if we say it's going up, 1% less than we were assuming, that's only $10,000. Not really going to move the needle. Property and casualty insurance also I thought was too conservative. But again, if we cut it from an 8% increase to a 6% increase, that's not going to move the needle very much. It'd be nice. Indirect cost. So when I say indirect cost, I mean, Nick, should I put you on the spot? So, all right, what I mean, I'm teasing a little bit, but it's related to DPW. So indirect costs are mostly our water and sewer bills. They pay for things like, for example, the DPW director. Maybe a third of her salary comes from the town budget, a third of her salary comes from the water bills, a third of her salary comes from the sewer bills. Indirect costs also pay for health insurance. A third of her health insurance comes from the water bills and the sewer bills. So what does that tell me? That tells me, well, if we said our health insurance was going up, much, much more than we expected, then the indirect cost, the percentage of the DPW employees' health insurance that comes from the water and sewer bills, that will also go up a little bit. I don't know if it's going to move the needle, but it's something. New growth. Remember, what is new growth? New growth is things that are being built right now, FY26, between last July and this coming July. things that are being built. We added a porch onto our house. Other people have done improvements to their houses. The 40Bs are making progress. That's new growth, and it adds to the tax revenue base. We're currently expecting $1 million in additional tax revenue from new growth. Mr. Milano thinks that it's conservative. Depending on how far we expect the 40Bs to progress by the end of June, we'll determine if that's going to be $1 million or if it's going to be a few $100,000 more than that. I tried to twist his arm on it a little bit, and he said, it's not going to matter how many people have added a porch onto their house in the last 9 months. What's going to matter is where the 40B is going to land at the end of June, and that's going to require some prognostication, but he's working with the assessors to come up with their best estimate of that. And the other thing is health insurance inflation. As I said, we're assuming 10% now. The pessimist in Mr. Milano and me thinks that could get worse. So the big numbers you see on here, state aid goes up by 1%, we get an extra $180,000. Health insurance inflation goes up by 1%, we lose an extra $180,000. So those are some of the unknowns. Yes, Brian.
Can I make a point? In Hingham, the average teacher salary for the last 5 years, the average teacher salary for the last 5 years went up 2.5% a year.
Okay.
So there's a lot of noise in the number, I think. Maybe they had construction or something. So
Yeah,
I think this revolves a lot on the contract, and I think they should look at competitive things.
okay.
And I question that. And
All right, I'd sort of like to keep focusing on the big picture. Free cash. So we had free cash. This is money as of the beginning of the year that we're currently in that came from being better than budget in previous years. So we have $4.5 million in free cash. We've already used $60,000 of that for the election that we had a few months ago. And here's what Mr. Milano has planned for it. About $1.2 million of non-bonded capital, meaning capital expenses. We're buying maybe a truck, maybe a vehicle, maybe an HVAC system, and we're not going out to Wall Street and issuing a bond for it. We're just paying cash for it. Mr. Milano is expecting that to be about $1.2 million. He's had discussions with the capital committee. The General Stabilization Fund, that's the Fort Knox. We put money in there. We only pull it out if there's a recession. Mr. Milano wants that to be, again, I'm speaking off the top of my head. I want to say we want it to be like 5% of our total budget. What he wants to see is $650,000 put in there. That seems reasonable. Retroactive collective bargaining payments. There was somebody on this team that I assigned to be an expert on this. I can't remember who it was, but the idea is, we've gone a year without a union contract, so we've got to put money aside because when we do have that union contract, we'll have to retroactively pay those pay increases. So we've got to squirrel that money aside for the retroactive pay increases that come in when we sign the contract. Does whoever I assign to be the retroactive collective bargaining payments expert, do you want to speak up and tell me I'm wrong? Okay, next. And there's a new thing this year. The town administrator suggested this, the select board agreed, that they want to hold in the free cash account. In the past, in recent years in Milton, we've spent it all down to the dollar. Mr. Milano wants to hold some in the free cash account, so next year we're starting off with $0.45 million in the free cash account. That's taking 10% of what we had in free cash and holding that for next year. So if you think about it, the year after that, the year after that, the year after that, it won't come out of it because we'll start with $450,000, we'll end with $450,000. We will get to spend all the free cash. But for now, that's where $450,000 are going. So what does that mean? That means out of $4.5 million, I'm rounding these numbers, don't add them up. About $3 million is accounted for. So we have about $1.5 million. So we are operating budget poor. When I first wrote the slide, I said we're free cash rich. Maybe not that rich, but we have some. What might we do with this free cash? Well, what we don't want to do is spend it on ongoing expenses. If we spend on ongoing expenses, we're going to have to come up with money to cover that the next year. So what can help this year's budget? One thing, and Mr. Milano's discussed this in some open meetings, and the school committee has had their opinions on it. So the school committee is taking their ongoing budget and they're using it to build up their circuit breaker reserve. Now, some of you remember when the school committee came and talked to us a couple months ago, the circuit breaker, that's their reserve account. That's what the circuit breaker is. They spend money on special education, and then 1 year later, the state reimburses them for that money, for some percentage of that money. I am not an expert on this account, but that's basically how it works. And right now, that reserve account is at almost zero because it got spent down with the crises of the last couple of years. They want to build it up. They want to build it up to about $3 million, which is what they spend out of that account every year. So to get there, they're putting aside approximately $700,000 out of their operating budget every year. Now, to my mind, and I believe to Mr. Milano's mind, building up a reserve, that's a one-time expense, and that's a reasonable use of free cash. So if they're using ongoing spending to pay for the building up the reserve, why don't we instead use free cash to, for all the other reserves in town, for the general stabilization fund, for the as I said, the budget stabilization fund, we might fund that out of free cash. Those are funded out of free cash in years when we have it, and they're not funded out of free cash in the years when we don't. Why don't the schools do that? I don't want to speak for anyone else. I did speak to Mr. Loring on the school committee. He had a different opinion. He thought it should stay in their budget. But again, I'm hesitant to speak for anyone else. I think we'll just, by we, I mean Mr. Milano, members from the select board, maybe myself and Brian, and members of the school committee will have to decide, is this an appropriate use for school cash? If so, I'm sort of implying it would give us more money. It wouldn't give us more money, but it would take some heat off the school budget. So if the schools are saying, oh, we have to cut $2 million now, but we're saying we're going to cover $700,000 of it, then the schools would have to say, oh, we're now only cutting $1.3 million. So that may be a good use of free cash. Another use of free cash is the budget stabilization account, which we talked about a few minutes ago. What we don't want to do with the budget stabilization account is put money in and take money out. If we said we'd have free cash and we put $1 million in the budget stabilization account and then took $1 million out, that's not right. That's taking free cash and using it to boost your operating budget. That's what we don't want to do. But what we can do, and I want to disclaim, this was not, the town administrator has not said okay to this plan. This is a plan I like. This is a plan that was discussed by at least one other member of the town budget committee this morning, is to do something like, we put $1 million of free cash into the budget stabilization account. We expect it's going to be 4 more years until we go to the town and ask them for an override. So if we put $1 million in there, we take $250,000 out this year. $250,000 out this year and for the next 3 years. So that's it's taking the free cash and putting it to use in our operating budget, but in a way that we see when it'll run out and we see what's coming. One thing I will say, I said that the policies of how much comes out of the stabilization budget is, I think it's a little fuzzy right now. I'd like to see it firmer, especially because if I say, for the next 3 years, let's pull out an extra $250,000. Well, a fuzzy number plus $250,000, I don't know what that is. So I think there'd be some details to be worked out here. But I think we can take money from free cash, put it in this account, and have some positive impact on this year's budget. There are also other uses of free cash that may not improve this year's budget. We can contribute more to the general stabilization account. Again, that's the Fort Knox that gets locked away. We're in better shape next time a recession hits. It won't help us with this year's budget. We have a capital stabilization account, which I mentioned a few minutes ago. We haven't used that in years. We could use it. One could use it in some year. If we put money in there, we'll have it later. We could spend more on non-bonded capital. This is me just riffing. I don't know if the capital committee has more things they want to spend it on, but that's one possibility. Another possibility is we could put it in the reserve fund. So the reserve fund, to remind you, that gets about $250,000 every year, and that is the fund, the people around this table control that fund. It's used for, I would say it's used for two things. One thing it's used for is unforeseen emergencies. For example, 2 years ago, 1 year ago, some amount of time ago, the wood chipper at the DPW died. It cost like $90,000, and they needed it. And so they came to the warrant committee, said, can we have the money? We said yes. The reason I'm giving that example is because that's the only time that's been used in that way over the past 4 years, to my knowledge. The other way it's used is at the end of the year. By the end of the year, I mean the year ends July 1st. So in the next couple weeks, when the town financial director is moving money account, looking at what accounts are underfunded and overfunded and what came up short, that money is used to say, okay, this account came up $5,000 short. The warrant committee chair usually goes in there, has the blessing of the warrant committee, and says, okay, take $5,000 out of our account and use it to shore up this account that came up short. That's the other way it's used. I saw some, I was just looking at some notes Mr. Milano made, and he said, not in relation to this, but he said that, for example, the schools had to pay $90,000 this year to replace a hot water heater in Glover. Well, okay, they made that happen. I'm glad they did. That sort of seems like something that could come out of the reserve fund, especially if we sort of make public, we're going to put more money in here, and we want to spend more money out of here. If instead of $250,000, maybe we bump that up to $400,000, and we tell people around town, departments around town, tell us when you have a one-time expense. That's what this is for. The hot water heater dying at Glover. I don't know how often that happens, but we can certainly say that was an unforeseen expense. We could pay for something like that out of this account. I'm rambling a little bit off a minor point, but I want to go on to the next slide because it has numbers. Okay, so Mr. Milano, the select board, the school committee, us are all trying to say, okay, we've got about a $2.5 million shortfall. One solution is tell the schools too bad, suck it up, lay off. You all may have seen the email from the superintendent who said we're going to have to lay off 27 teachers or whatever. That's one option. So how do we make this $2.5 million shortfall? The first line is a little misleading because the first line is something that is going to happen. Cunningham and Collicott building the new library on the 3rd floor. They were planning on financing that in the year FY27 for various reasons. They're not going to go out to Wall Street and finance that until FY28. That's going to, I'll say, delay $200,000 in payments. There's no such thing as free money, but it is going to at least be a relief on the FY27 budget and put it off into the future. So if we're looking at the FY27 budget, $2.5 million shortfalls become $2.3 million. Another option is paying for health insurance. There are certain employees, remember when I talked about the DPW director being paid some amount from water, some amount from sewer. There are, for example, school employees who are paid, they work in the lunchroom and they're paid from the lunch account, which has a big chunk of money in it. And I believe that was just last year. It may have been last year. I shouldn't speak off the cuff. Their salary is paid from the school account. Mr. Milano's asking, could their health insurance be paid from the school account, from this revolving fund? If we pay for people's health insurance with that, I'm just giving a swag of $300,000. That's assuming it's 15 employees at $20,000 a year. Don't take that to the bank, but it's something, ballpark. What else? What I said a few minutes ago. If we can use free cash to make a contribution to a stabilization fund so that the schools don't have to pay choose not to pay $700,000 of their own operating budget into a stabilization fund, that's a relief on the pressure to the tune of $700,000. We're running out of free cash, but if we contribute to make numbers work easily, $800,000 in budget stabilization, use a quarter of that, that gets us $200,000. So cobbling these things together, that's $1.4 million. We're still $1.1 million short. What do we do then? Well, we could cross our fingers and hope that the governor's budget for state aid comes in higher. We can ask the assessors, what do you think new growth is going to be? See if that cuts into it. It could be cut down a little more. That's sort of what we're going to find out in the next little while. Let me take a peek at what the next slide is. Okay, the next slide is, well, I'll just say this because it's quick. When we put together this year's budget, one lesson from this is we should look not only at the FY27 budget, we should look at FY27, FY28, maybe even 4 years into the future. We should look at what are the assumptions going forward. We, by we I maybe mean I, should present to town meeting. Here's the budget, town meeting, not only FY27, but our forecast of what's going into the future. Here are the assumptions in this forecast. Here's why we think these assumptions are reasonable. We should know what we're facing in the future because that's not what happened this year. I will step back. As I started by saying, we're at the point of the year when Mr. Milano is putting together his budget with the advice of the select board, with the advice of the school committee, and I would like with the advice of the warrant committee. In the past, we've waited for him to give it to us. I think he'd be open to hearing what we think. So the things on this list, not the first one because that's a done deal. Do people have thoughts about the things on this list, or are there things that I mentioned that, you know, Mr. Milano is putting together his budget? Do we have suggestions for, we like these changes, we don't like these changes, we have other ideas for other changes?
And two questions.
Yes.
So it feels like even if we made these adjustments, we're just kind of putting a Band-Aid on the problem for this year, and maybe that's just what happens all the time, and I'm new to this and don't know. But the problem is just gonna be kind of exacerbated next year because we will have kind of wrung out all the sort of excess or the extra funds to try to close the gap. So is there discussion around that? And, you know, things might change. You might get a better health insurance number the next year increase, or you could get more new growth, or, you know, there's things that could change that. But, you know, structurally, the challenge will be similar next year, probably.
Correct.
And is that just part of the deal, or, I mean, I really like the way you described the original proposal of the stabilization fund. That seemed like a really elegant solution to some of this challenge. So that was my first question. Is this just part of the deal? And
I think you're correct. Yeah, I like the idea of the stabilization fund. I think it just, you know, in my imagination, it's just not big enough. It's helping, but it's not big enough. Yeah. So when you ask, is that what we're going to find going forward? That's what has me and members of the school committee and Mr. Milano waking up screaming in the middle of the night. The short answer is yes. The second answer is maybe. Third answer is let's see what we can figure out.
Yep. And so then my second question is, I mean, one of the remedies is to just take the stabilization fund as it sits today and close the gap.
Okay.
I don't really like that choice.
Yeah.
But it's the right, you'd still have a little bit of a balance left there.
Close the entire gap.
Yeah.
I mean,
You have 2.7 million balance.
yeah, I guess I would say I'm trying to think of how to.
I mean, if the whole concept of the creation of the fund was unfortunately flawed because of the bad math model, I mean, you could take that free cash, the extra 1 million, and put it in there to sort of prop it up for future years. And but you know, that's one of the solutions there.
Yeah, I think if we fiddled with the numbers to say, okay, we thought there was going to be an override in FY30, but gee, now we're going to have to expect an override in FY29. If we fiddled with the numbers, if that was what we were seeing, I'd say maybe. But if it's, let's clean, there are, to me, I would think that's fiscally irresponsible enough and enough against the idea of this budget stabilization fund that I would not be comfortable with that. Like if I had to face members of the public who are saying, you're laying off X number of teachers and keeping some money in this fund, I would say, yes, we are. I don't want to come to that, but you raise a good point, and it's a matter of opinion, and it's ultimately up to town meeting.
Yep.
And sub-ultimately up, is that a word? Up to us. There are no bad ideas.
It seemed like
I
you're
don't feel
probably
comfortable with
gonna
that
have to
idea.
take More of this, you're probably gonna have to take more of the stabilization fund earlier than was originally contemplated to try to make the concept work together. And so, I mean, maybe if you do that and you reallocated some of the free cash like you described, you kind of close a lot of that gap. And I don't know, like, I've never,
Yeah.
I just don't know, maybe this is the process every year.
You're catching me speechless because you came up with an idea that I didn't come up with, so congratulations. It's an idea to explore. Certainly if it's like splitting the difference and saying, we're going to move an override 1 year earlier. And especially because the problem isn't just FY27.
Right.
I don't have a good response to you.
You were looking for feedback. Those are my
Yeah.
two questions.
Thank you very much. Nikki?
So when I look at the projection for 2027, the requests from November, obviously, and then the projection that Nick put together, that's what we're comparing,
Okay.
right?
Nikki's looking at her Excel spreadsheet, just so everybody knows.
Yeah, so when I look at it, we're contributing, and maybe I'm totally clueless and missed this, so I apologize if I'm like behind the eight ball. But we're contributing $1 million to general stabilization, we're contributing $1 million to budget stabilization, and we're contributing $500,000 to sped stabilization.
That's probably my made-up numbers in the file that I sent you.
Oh.
Sorry, the file that I sent you.
But if we don't do that, then we break even.
Okay, yeah, in the file that I sent you, I made some of my own assumptions about what free cash might be used for. This is better than whatever I sent you last week, a better estimate of what free cash is used for. So yeah, we could not contribute $0.65 million to general stabilization. The problem is anytime you take free cash, and let's say we take free cash and we use $650,000 to pay for 10 teachers. Let's say we do that. Okay, then what do we do next year about those 10 teachers? They're still on our payroll. The first few years I was on the Warrant Committee, my fellow Warrant Committee members are probably shooting lightning bolts at their TV right now because I'm guilty of this. We kicked the can down the road. We used free cash to pay for operating expenses. We used, $650,000 to pay for 10 teachers or whatever, with the thought of, we've got to do this. We're probably going to have an override next year. We said that several years in a row. We got to do this. We're probably going to have an override next year. Eventually, it came true. We just had an override last year. If we take this money and use it to pay the salaries for 10 teachers and we don't have free cash next year.
Okay, I'm going to just, is everything in here your assumptions, or are these like the real budget numbers? Like the yellow tab that says summary?
Sure.
Maybe it's just, no, they're.
Should we talk now or should we talk later? I'm happy to talk now.
Probably talk later, just so I understand the spreadsheet. It just
Okay.
looks to me like we have a $2.5 million deficit for FY 2027. Is that,
Correct.
okay,
Correct.
so then.
$2.5 million deficit, that's what I have right here,
Okay,
$2.5 million.
right, but 2.5 million is going into stabilization funds.
Right, but that's why I said we're operating budget poor, but we're free cash rich. We
Okay.
don't want to use free cash to pay for ongoing expenses.
No, I get that, but this is saying that in 2027, we're putting $2.5 million into stabilization funds. And we have a 2.5 million, like I don't,
Right, because
right, obviously we don't want to use free cash for I get that all the time. But I guess, are those Nick's numbers, the million, so we
no,
didn't.
those aren't those.
Okay, we'll talk about it another
Yeah.
time. But this ties out to the yellow summary page. So I'm looking at the expenditures page, which is yellow, and the summary page, which is a yellow tab, and the numbers totally tie.
Yeah.
But the expenditures, if I compare to FY 2024, we put $500,000 in those funds. In FY 2027, we're putting $3 million into those funds. I mean, is that like, that just seems like that's a big number.
I'm not following. So here's what we're projecting putting into the, no, not the budget stabilization account, but we're projecting putting in $650,000 into general stabilization. And if I have my way, maybe
Okay,
we'll put
I'm
out-
just looking at this spreadsheet that Nick created that shows expenditures going into these funds. Am I crazy? Of $2.5 million.
in the past.
No, in 2027 projection.
Yeah, those are my numbers.
But the summary slide you said is Nick's numbers. It's okay, it's fine. We'll talk about it another time. I'm super confused, but we'll figure it out.
Does money go into the stabilization funds outside of allocations from free cash?
It can, but it usually doesn't because, free cash means we've got a good year. If we have a lean year, then, yeah, that would only be if we had a really lean year and didn't have much free cash, but still felt it was financially prudent to put money in there.
Or an override.
Yeah. Well, wait, I thought he was maybe talking about the general stabilization fund.
Well, the capital one, the general stabilization fund, and now this new one. Like the
Yeah.
new one's gonna have $700,000 from the general budget every single year.
Yep.
I didn't know if the other two also had allocations from the general budget as a matter of, financial prudence.
No.
Or only from the, when there's free cash to allocate separately.
To my knowledge, only when there's free cash. I mean, I'm sure at some point in history that's been different, but
Okay, I have a
Yes.
request for free
Sure.
cash expenditure.
okay.
And it goes back to the accounting systems and reporting that we have in general in the town. Is that I know there's a shortfall, but if you do not invest in better reporting,
Yeah.
you cannot measure progress on anything you don't measure. And there's only two ways to balance a budget. It's either raise more money or spend less, or cut the budget. I mean, those are three ways. And with the limited ability to drill down in both the school and the town budget, they either need to save or start investing immediately. And
Okay. I will say that we, I representing this committee, me and Brian on the budget committee, I'll say Winston Daly from the select board on the budget committee, have all expressed very strongly that would be money well spent to get the town a new financial software. And I don't want to paraphrase what I heard back. I heard back generally positive. Mr. Milano, was happy to hear that we supported that, but I certainly didn't hear, and we're going to get it within 6 months. Brian, have you heard anything I haven't heard? I don't.
No, but you're accurate.
I just don't remember, when they might get it.
yeah, the problem is nobody wants to do it because it's hard, it's expensive, and takes time, and they're busy. But the longer you put it down, the more the problem compounds year over year over year over year. And so until it's actually a priority mandated by either the town or the select board,
I wonder, when you say mandated, what can we do aside from encouraging the town employees to do this? For example, could the budget contain a warrant article? I think this would have to come from, might have to come from the select board, or it might be something we could tweak. A line item in the budget saying, to be spent on
that's
financial software.
what and like whether it's a modernization fund, whether it's a line item,
So I'm just thinking, do we sort of be jerks? We're not being televised, are we? If we just sort of be jerks and put a line item in the budget, maybe a line item in the town financial department's budget, they ask for, I don't know, $200,000 in salary, and we say, yep, you get $200,000 in salary. You also get $50,000 to implement a new financial system. That's in your budget. I suppose they could not spend it, but that's,
But, so it needs to be a town mandate driven by the select board or town meeting, right?
when you say needs to be, no, the town administrator could maybe make that happen with what he has now. But if we want to play hardball, just a little arms, that might be one way to do it. Brian and Nick, were you talking about this topic, or?
Well, I was going to, but
Okay.
quickly, I think the selectmen want to do this, get a software financial
yeah.
package, and they
No,
should.
I don't think, nobody doesn't want to do, but
But
they,
we should get them to come up with a warrant.
I mean, they have to make it that it is in a near-term immediate priority, and either they need to plan for it now for near-term implementation, or start saving for it now, or prepare for it, but like, until you make hard and fast milestones, like, nobody wants to take on an enterprise project because it just makes everybody's life harder, and they say, we're in the middle of an override, we're in the middle of audit, we're in the middle of budget season, we don't have time, and then a year goes by and it gets kicked down the road again. And plus, and hopefully this isn't the case, like, there's additional scrutiny that happens when you have that level of granular insight on a budget.
Okay. Yeah, I will say, the town administrator's boss is the select board. So the real ones who could apply pressure are the select board. Now, Nick was next, then I see Lee Michael raising his hand. Yeah, Nick?
I just think we'd have to have some reasonable basis for what a reasonable estimate would be of that.
Sure.
If we're gonna put it in the budget.
Yeah. Lee Michael? Lee Michael's going to tell me I'm way off.
Thanks, Jay. I was just going to say, I think that we've beat this conversation to death given the amount of information that we have. I'm not sure how much more we could accomplish tonight. Is there a goal that you have in mind?
I guess a goal would be the select board is giving input to the town administrator, the school committee is giving input to the town administrator. Do we have input that we want to give to the town administrator? My input might be things like this. Brian?
I want to go back to what Andrew said in the beginning premise of this, where it all hinges off a 4.1% increase in salaries. And I just downloaded this file from DESI. In like over 10 years, the average teacher salary in the state's gone up like 2%.
I think we're getting off.
I don't think so, though, because that's what's driving this, because I got an email from Katie, because I asked her about the budget, why it's going up so much. And it all hinges on what they think salary is going to go up. Either it's the percentage or the head count, which I can never get the thing in it. So I would go back, I mean, do we need this increase? Like, what's in it? Like, what's part of it? I think we should challenge that first. So you asked for input. I would like to challenge the 4.1%. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I think we should just get the details behind it. And I'd like to see what's in it.
Okay.
And I'd like to see if it's head count. Because if you look at Milton, like over 13 years,
I think,
the expenditures have gone up 78%, teachers have gone up 26% head count, and the student population's gone up 10%.
yeah,
So-
but the question for us is the dollar amount that's going to the schools. And then how they're spending it is up to them. So.
But they want the money. That's the whole thing. How they spend it, they can spend it however they want, I guess. But that is, I mean, we still allocate the money.
I think what I'd like to be able to say to the town administrator or not is the warrant committee has these opinions on how to make up the shortfall, or we think the shortfall should not be made up, or fill in the blank. Do we, and I'm catching y'all all off guard. So it's perfectly fine if we don't have any feedback right now, but it's perfectly fine if you email me and give me some feedback. I don't know if we as a committee have something to say. Lee Michael?
Yeah, my feedback would be, thanks for letting us know. Please keep us informed as you find out what the state, finances are going to be, et cetera, and then we'll come back with solutions or suggestions. I think it's probably too early to start making suggestions.
Things are in flux, yes. I think Lee Michael may have a point that, unless I'm hearing something else, move on to the next topic?
I have one
Shoot.
follow-up number that nobody's gonna like. So feasibility study for an ERP upgrade, not just a financial system, but an enterprise resource planning.
Okay.
For Nantucket, feasibility study, 75,000. For a town of this size, estimated somewhere between 1.8 to $3 million.
Okay.
But that's not just financial accounting software.
Okay.
That is resource planning, could include
Knowledge is
payroll,
power.
but
Okay.
it is, and not surprising.
That still may be money well spent.
Yeah,
but
well, that's
Okay.
why large entities implement ERPs
Oh,
Okay.
sure.
as opposed to an accounting software.
I'm sorry, that's for implementing the software, not for the feasibility study.
Feasibility is about $75,000 is a best guess.
Right. Think it's time to move on to the next topic, which I believe the next topic, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I put quite a few things on the agenda that we may not get to tonight. I'm procrastinating. Okay. Police budget. Macy will report to us on the police budget in the next couple of weeks. Capital budget. Lorraine will report to us on the capital budget in the next couple of weeks. That brings us to fire budget. Larry, do you have something you'd like to discuss on the fire budget?
I mean, it should be pretty quick.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Have Ron join us. Thank you very much.
Okay. So I don't know if you guys had a chance to read my email. So we had some follow-up questions when we reviewed the fire department budget. I don't know, whenever it was, like back in November or something like that, or December. So I got some answers to those follow-up questions, so I just figured I'd bring them up here. I do have one question, Jay. So when I have these like email back and forth and then I summarize it, I mean, that's public, that should be public information, right?
It's
So-
public information. Anybody can say, I'm doing a public data request for every email between Larry and the fire chief.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, great. All right. I just wanted to make sure I didn't need to like store it somewhere or put it in a document or whatever.
Nope, as long as you're using your town email address.
Yeah, that sounds great. Okay, yeah, so I mean, we had some follow-up questions. Let me just run through them. So, I mean, the first question was, why was there no additional requests for staffing if we're so far from the NFPA recommended levels? If you guys recall, the NFPA, the National Fire Patrolman Association, recommends, about a staffing for a town this size. It recommends a staff of about maybe 17 or 18 firefighters more than what we have today. And the question we asked is, well, why wasn't Chief Madden asking for those additional 16 or 17 firefighters? And the answer, of course, is that he was required to submit a level budget, as all the departments were, which we should all be aware of that now. We've heard that from every department at this point. So that's it. So no new firefighters this year. He had the additional 5 firefighters that he hired last year that he's still in the process of training and staffing up for. So that's that. The next question was, I'm going to save the second question for last because that's the most interesting one. Brian, I think you asked for for a presentation or a detailed report of the runs and response times. So he sent a calls for service report,
Yep.
which we can look at.
Thank you.
It's pretty interesting. Doesn't translate into numbers, but it is interesting reading. It's mostly 911 calls, ambulance calls.
Thank you for that.
Yep. So you guys asked for a little bit more detail on the new equipment costs, and he just says that it's the just general inflation. A number of different. I mean, he had a number of different speculations, tariffs, things like that, for the most part. But it's just generally inflation has been high all across the board, and it's high for his new equipment costs as well. But the most interesting thing that he sent was a comparison of fire department staffing levels and budget compared to other towns of similar size. So he provided the fire department budgets he reached out to his fellow fire chiefs from Canton, Needham, Dedham, Randolph, as well as a little bit detail about how the budget is broken down for each fire department, and that was pretty interesting. I tried to put it together in a spreadsheet. Let me see if I can find that. I used an AI-generated spreadsheet. Well, at any rate, I mean, what it comes down to is, in general, compared to Canton, Needham, Dedham, and Randolph, we're about $1 million. Our fire department budget is about $1 million lower than each of those towns. Now, some of those towns, like Randolph, is a little bit bigger, 35,000 people. Needham has 33,000 people, so they're roughly the same size, but they are a little bit bigger. So, I mean, 5,000 people, that many households, that many streets, it does, it doesn't seem like a lot of money. Where 28,000 people, a town that's 33,000 people doesn't seem that much larger. But you can imagine 5,000 additional people in the town would make a difference in the budget. And then the other big difference between Milton and some of these other towns is that we outsource our EMS to Fallon, our emergency medical services to Fallon, whereas the other towns have emergency medical services on staff. So that makes a difference in the budget as well. And other than that, yeah, there wasn't a huge explanation as to why the budget was so much lower for the fire department for Milton than it was for everything else. I mean, we have a smaller tax base because of our lack of commercial space in the town, and that could have something to do with it. I mean, it's all speculation at this point. But it was pretty interesting to see how much smaller our fire department budget is than these other towns. That was eye-opening. It'll be interesting to see that for other departments as well.
I'm sorry. Jay? Yes, okay.
Yeah,
I'm calling on
sorry, Jay.
myself.
Yeah.
You make a good point about the commercial tax base because, people always say, we want more commercial to have taxes. And my first thought is, if you have commercial space, you need police, you need fire, you need health
Oh, sure.
inspectors.
Yeah.
So some of these other places that spend more on fire departments, do they have a lot of restaurants?
Commercial space.
And,
That's a good point. I mean, look at Canton. Canton's crazy, It's got that huge industrial park. It's got its business district is really pretty complex compared to ours.
So they might have more fire needs, even if their population is the
I
same.
would think that they would, health inspectors and things like that. Yeah.
Well, fire specifically, I mean.
Actually,
That's what
Needham's
you're
the
looking
same
at.
way. Needham's got a gigantic business district, and it's got 128.
Yeah.
Mhm. Interesting. Yeah. So, anyways, yeah, that's a good point, Chief. I hadn't
Okay.
thought of that. So, anyways, yeah, those are the answers to the questions. That's my presentation. Follow up on the fire department. If anybody has any other questions, And,
Just one question. You said that they use Fallon, they outsource the emergency. Is that not for all? They still send a fire truck for emergency calls, right? Like it's on their list. Maybe you don't know the answer.
yeah,
but-
911 calls. Yeah. I mean,
Emergency medical responses is the vast majority of their calls.
right. Yeah, it's the 911
That's not,
calls.
that's them.
You call 911 and everybody shows up.
I vaguely recall Chief Madden saying that they go anyway because they are frequently able to get there sooner than other emergency services.
And their ladder truck has equipment, has some pretty specialized equipment that may be necessary in an emergency,
Yeah, so
in a medical emergency.
I remember talking about an instance where they start CPR and maybe EMT show up later and resume or something along those lines, that they are truly the first of the first responders.
Yeah, no, I mean, I called 911 for an unrelated matter, which I won't go into.
I'm gonna rein this in a
Yeah,
little
sorry,
bit.
Jay. I was going to tell a story.
Cliffhanger.
Sorry.
Now we want to know.
It's probably not good for a public forum anyway. But I just remember the fire truck showed up first, like way ahead of the ambulance.
Okay. So thank you for that follow-up on the fire. Can we move on to the next? I believe the next two agenda items were other budget updates and other non-budget warrant items. Other budget updates, I don't think there's anything to report. I'll probably be contacting some of you that have some of the smaller budgets assigned and asking you to dig in a little bit with specific questions, but I'll be emailing people individually about that. Non-budget warrant items. Mr. Milano sent me an email last week, I believe, and then I forwarded it to all of you. So for the non-budget warrant items that don't come up year after year that we're looking at, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 maybe? So 4 of them, I'll say, there are no small parts, there are only small actors. But the first 4 on the list Mr. Milano sent, it's like, adopt this Mass General Law, adopt that Mass General Law, allow the select board to do this, allow the select board to do that. As we did in the fall, I want to assign people to look into each of these. I don't think they'll be that challenging. And then we've got the signs bylaw amendment. Larry, you and Macy were assigned to that in the fall. I assume you're going to keep on keeping on?
Yeah. Yeah, that was
Okay.
fun. Sure.
Okay, all right. There's another local historic district in Milton Village. Those of us who was here 2 years ago. Me, Ron, Julia, might be the only ones who were here 2 years ago. They came to us 2 years ago. They said, we'd like a local historic district. Not to put too fine a point on it, their proposal was not ready to be presented at town meeting. So they're coming back again. I've assigned Ron to this, partly because he's a lawyer and partly because he was around 2 years ago. He says he doesn't need a sidekick. We'll see. And then the last one that was not in what Mr. Milano sent me several days ago. Oh, sorry. And then there's the Atherton Street Fire Station. We have 3 fire stations. We rebuilt one. We're in the process of rebuilding the second one. Now they're going to come to town meeting and say, here's what we propose for the third one. Tentatively, that group looking into that was me, Macy, and Nikki. I think what the warrant committee can contribute to that is, one hand being a skeptical eye, being, what are you proposing? Is it prudent, et cetera? But also, we don't know anything about what a fire building needs to be, but we can look at the finances. If they're proposing spending X amount on a fire station 3 years from now, what's that going to look like? What's it going to add to the tax levy? I'm not ignoring that we may or may not be building a $150 million school 5 years from now. How will those things work together? So I think one thing the warrant committee can do is really look at that side of it. What's the money? What does it cost? How does that affect the taxpayers? So that's the fire station. And one thing Mr. Milano did not send but told me about today, this may fall somewhere in between the small to medium size, is the Historic Commission. Currently, if you have a historic house, you're not allowed to demolish it without permission. I think they want to change it from demolish to partially demolish. So that's another article that's going to come in front of us. So if I count that up, I have maybe 5 or 6 needs. There's the 4 things that I said were small, the one that's sort of medium, the demolition of historic buildings. And then the 6th may be, Ron said he doesn't need assistance on the Milton Village Historic District. It was pretty involved last time. So if I may want to give him a sidekick on that.
Jay, throw my name in, whichever one you want.
For whichever one? Okay. I didn't know. I made a list of who, might not be too overwhelmed. I thought you might be overwhelmed. No?
No.
Okay. You're retired. It's nice. Okay.
No, I
All right.
was.
When I did look at who had a lot on their plate and who maybe had some room to add things, I came up with Lee, Michael, Andrew, James, Lee, Nikki, and Cecile. That's 5 people, and there were 5 roles until I got that email from Mr. Milano tonight. So,
Jay, I
I'm
don't
happy
know
to be a sidekick
what you think I'm doing.
on,
I think you're doing the schools, my friend.
Oh, yeah, right.
Oh, yes, the schools.
Like if you have the schools.
Yep,
Yeah.
fair enough.
yeah, if I'm gonna be a sidekick, they would probably want to be either the power purchase agreements for solar or energy credit agreements.
I was sort of thinking those might be a one-person gig.
Okay.
Where do you think you need help, Jay, beyond the Milton Village Historic District?
Yeah, Ron's got his hand up too.
Ron?
I spoke to the folks at the Historic District. I thought you were assigning me both of those, and I did talk to the chair about the language change. from the destruction of property, or I can't remember what the exact
Oh, okay.
wording, but I'm happy to work that one. I'm happy to take side takes, but if people are busy, don't feel you need to, I'm happy to take both of these solo or with help. Thank you.
Okay, so you're on that one with the demolition. Okay, fine. And yeah, I would like at least one more person on the. Let's email each other and see, who won the Milton Village one. I haven't looked at what they're proposing this year, but 2 years ago it needed a lot of work. So it will need to be somebody who doesn't just say, "Oh, you're proposing this? Okay, great." Not that I'm saying anyone on the committee would do that, but especially it might be a little more than that.
I wouldn't mind taking on the fire station, but I've got the sign by law, so I guess that is kind of.
Yeah, I was thinking the sign by law was pretty big.
Yeah.
The fire station, Macy's got a lot on her plate. So I said, I think it's me, Macy, and Nikki.
Okay.
Maybe you and Macy could swap out. I'll see what Macy thinks.
All right. Yeah, either way is fine.
Okay. So I know we didn't come to conclusions on this, but I'm not hearing any squawking or screaming, so I'll assign people pseudo-randomly.
Just draw out of a hat.
Something like that.
That'd be cool.
That's
As far as you know, they'll be drawn out of a hat. But actually, I'll look into your soul and
Said
decide
pseudo,
what you're a good fit for.
Dude, that's creepy.
Really is.
So unless there's more discussion about,
Thanks, Jay. I need to watch cartoons before I go to bed now.
You do anyway.
yeah,
Committee nightmares.
You do anyway.
there, I guess the only one of those of substance that we sort of could talk about tonight, but probably not, is the Atherton Fire Station. I was in a meeting earlier tonight where they were talking about the plans for it. I'll just tell you, I had a conversation with the chair of the Fire Station Building Committee last night, and I said, I have two questions for you. One, why does that station need work to be done on it? And two, if it needs work done on it, why does it need to be now instead of like 10 years from now?
Oh, yeah.
And we talked about a lot of things, but he took away those two questions. In the meeting tonight, he conveyed that to his committee. He's like, these are the two questions we have from the Warrant Committee. So that's what I want to hear from them. And then,
I'm sure they have an answer, though. I mean, they had to replace all the other fire stations.
yeah, I'm sure. But, I want a concrete answer that I can wrap my head around. As
Sure.
a normal person who knows nothing about fire stations, tell me in a way that I can understand and I could tell my neighbor,
Yeah.
this is why work needs to be done on Atherton Street. And this is why it shouldn't wait 10 years.
Yeah.
Those are my
They
two
did come up with another presentation like they did for the East Milton Fire Station a couple of years ago. It was amazing.
Yeah,
And it was eye-opening.
yeah. So I don't know if there's anything else I wanted to say about the fire station. I think I've said what I want to say. I think that'll be the big non-budget one for this year. I mean, it might be tempting to say everybody loves spending money on fire stations, but I think we need to take a critical eye look at it. Really be sure that this is something we want to recommend at town meeting if we do.
And is the initial appropriation just for the study, or is it? Okay.
Correct. And it wouldn't come out of the ongoing budget. I think the thought is that it would then be part of the borrowing
Yeah.
if and when the fire station is built.
Okay.
If there's no other discussion, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to
So
adjourn.
moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Okay, thank you very much.
Aye.
We're going forward, I'm going to try to get back on the every 2 week schedule. I don't see any reason why not to. I don't think we have to meet next week for any reason, so I'll say 2 weeks from now.